So frame isn't the narrative itself. It's not about who originated it. It's just about who's having control of it. So frame, first of all, what is frame? Well, it's not a concept certainly that I made up that was made up in red pill circles either. Now I'm going to reference here Rollo Tomasi. If you just do a search, rational male and frame, you're going to get several articles by him. Now, those blog articles are great. So they're good reads, and I recommend it. But understand, he didn't originate the term. This is a term that's been around for a while in cognitive psychology. Now, where did I hear it from? Well, I've been studying psychology for some time here, right? So in cognitive psychology, what frame is, the definition is, it's a set of parameters defining either a particular mental schema or the wider cognitive structure by which an individual perceives or evaluates the world. All right, so that's a definition from cognitive psychology. Now, frame and social dynamics can be understood as this. Frame is the contextual, perceptual narrative that you operate from in a social interaction. So the person who has frame or has frame control in that social interaction is the person whose narrative is perceived as more dominant. All right. Now, this is due to the dominant person's strong sense of identity and strong sense of belief, confidence, and social skills and game, more so than it is the reasoning or logic behind the narrative. All right. And it's even more so, it's that game and that confidence and that belief is even more important than where the narrative originally came from. Because so there's a lot of misconceptions about frame here. And it's so you don't have to be the originator of the idea or the narrative or the narrative. You just have to be in control of it, if that makes sense. So in other words, the dominant person can adopt the narrative of a person in power, let's say a manager or a boss, and then end up having frame in those social interactions through the narrative. Okay. So we see this in marriages a lot, where like a wife will adopt the idea from the husband, and the husband got the idea, let's say, from church, like in a traditional marriage or how he grew up. So she adopts the idea from a husband, but then she takes charge of the narrative and ends up being the one in control of it as the dominant force in the relationship, while the husband lies to himself and thinks he's in charge because the narrative was his idea. All right, that happens a lot, where a woman will let you have an idea and give you the credit that it's your idea, and then you think you're in charge, and actually she's the one controlling that narrative the rest of the time. So you end up being in her frame, right? So frame isn't the narrative itself. It's not about who originated it. It's just about who's having control of it. Now, frame is everything. All right. Think of it as influence or programming. You have been programmed your entire life. Even before you were born, that programming started. It started with your parents. It started with the social environment you were being born into. And your parents had a set of narratives, some of which they may have taken control over, but some of which they had been programmed into. And in that set of narratives, they in turn programmed you, along with your peers, school teachers, society, people you grew up with. Because as you were growing up, you were not emotionally or mentally mature enough to realize that this programming existed. As a baby, your identity is not really separate in your own mind from your caretakers. And then as you grow, it's a process of trying to find your own identity. That's the teenage rebellious years. But even during those teenage rebellious years, programming is going on, whether it's through the rebellion. Oftentimes the idea is that you latch on to that really are someone else's ideas, and being in control by someone else. You're doing it to say, I'm I'm different and I'm better and more evolved than my society I came from, but really you're just latching on to a different set of programming and somebody else's frame. And you are still operating in that programming right now, probably. All right. Hopefully not. Now, what I like think about it, when you grab that thing off the shelf to go buy, who made you choose that? Was that your free will or is that your programming? Was that idea in your head because something you thought you needed? But why that particular choice? Why that particular brand at that particular time? And so I'm not somebody who am going to sit here and assert that free will doesn't exist. I know some people do that. Some of you Sam Harris fans like to do that. It's not really me. However, I will present the idea though that your free will is not as free as you think it is, because programming is involved and frame is involved, and oftentimes that frame is not yours. Now, someone is always doing programming. There is no situation where it's not happening in any social circumstance. So you are either being programmed or you are the programmer. And he who holds the frame is the one who is in control of the programming. Now, most people don't want to recognize that frame or programming even exists. They go along in life making decisions based on programming given to them by somebody else. And they tell themselves, well, I'm making a decision because it's really what I want or it's who I am. But really, they're just in someone else's frame operating on programming that ultimately may or may not be for their benefit. Okay. When that nice guy walks around and being nice to the girl he likes and doing all of the unattractive things that nice guys do or tend to do, that is him operating off of a social narrative and programming that is not really meant for him to get that girl and to win her attraction over and to have her desire, even though that's what he wants. He thinks it'll get him there. He's been told that, but the programming is not for him. The programming is instead designed for her to see him as an option to use for resources, favors, or even just to boost her self-esteem. It's designed for her to get what she wants. And then if she chooses him to be with him, then cool. But she may just use his nice tendencies and attention and time and effort and not really give anything in return for that and do something different. And he's being programmed to say, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I think I should just keep doing that over and over again because that's going to get somebody to like me eventually. The programming is off and it's designed to enslave him and suit somebody else. When you work for a corporation or work for a boss or work with somebody and they're in charge of the frame, they may or may not be running a programming set of programs that suits you or that's beneficial to you. They are going to be beneficial to themselves first. And it's up to you to decide whether that programming is something you want to be a part of or not. I mean, you're listening to me, and if you're understanding what I said, you're hopefully by choice allowing me to program you, and that's okay. When I talk to my coaches and people that I trust, I'm letting them program me. But the difference is I'm aware of this and I'm choosing which programming I'm going to go with. And I'm holding my own frame the entire time because I'm controlling the narrative that comes into my awareness. At least that is the struggle and the fight that I'm doing every single day that you should be doing. But most people are complacent because they want to follow, and that makes them feel safe, and that makes them feel like they have a sense of security and like they'll get what they want. But they'll never get what they want completely because really they were following somebody else, and their Their needs will always come first. Their wants, desires, and purpose will always come first. People want to believe they're in charge of themselves, in charge of their relationships, even when their decisions don't necessarily benefit them. They want to believe that they're in charge without having to challenge the frame or take control of the narrative or become the programmer themselves. That's what people want. It makes them feel safe. But those people will never be in charge of their own lives. So to be that alpha dominant leader, or whatever term you want to call it, as a man, and to get what you want as a man, you have to choose to challenge the narrative and take back your frame. Okay? You can do things benevolently to help others and to help others achieve what they want, but you want to do those without sacrificing yourself in who you are. And who are you anyway? Without frame, you don't even know. So instead of acting on someone else's narratives that's designed to serve them, take back your frame and decide to serve in the way that you think is important and good.